Okay, I think we're going to get started. Thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you very much for your patience with the issues this morning. Just a little bit of housekeeping. I'm going to ask if everyone can mute their microphone, please, just to avoid any distractions and stuff like that. And then if you do have questions, then feel free to unmute and ask as we go. And I also have the functionality in the participants bar under More. You can go on there and you can put your hand up. You can clap, you can grab a coffee, and you can thumbs up and thumbs down. Give us some non-verbal feedback throughout the presentation if you'd like. And you can also feel free to use the chat function to ask questions while we go. So actually, if we go back one slide, Jess, please. I just want, before we do anything, I just wanted to bring your attention to the ETC Virtual Lunch and Learn series. This is the second one of 3 scheduled for October and November. This is the first time the ETC committee has done anything like this, so it's pretty exciting. We're happy to be invited and happy to participate in this. And having said that, we are planning more for the winter semester, and we are looking for presenters. So if you're interested in registering to present an ETC Lunch and Learn, please go to the edtechontario.ca website and register and submit a proposal. And also keep your eye out for other sessions. I guess it was 2 weeks ago on October 31st, there was a session called H5P Interactive Content, Not a Barbecue Sauce, which was a great session for those of you who participated. And we have another one coming up in, I guess, 2 weeks from now called Creating Accessible PowerPoint Documents. So keep your eye out for that one, and please register if that's of interest to you. Also, just a shout out, keep your eyes and calendars open for May 2019. ETC organizes an annual learning conference called Advancing Learning. So you can check out the advancinglearning.ca website for more information, or you can follow ADVLEARN on Twitter for more information. Okay, so this is a session called Interface and Interaction, and it's presented by myself and Jessica Pearce, and we also have our colleague Bernadette Summers helping us out, facilitating some chats for us. What we have scheduled for today is just basically four sections. We want to start with some outcomes and introductions. And then we'll talk about interface and some of the work we're doing in that space. We'll give some examples and demonstrations of some of the interactions that we're using in some of the courses that we're designing. And then finally, we'll wrap it up with some questions and answers. So seeing as I'm talking, I might as well go first. So my name is Brian Gould. We all work at Mohawk College. And we are 3 of 5 that make up a small online learning and development team. And we report directly to Siebert Adamson, who is the Dean of Continuing Education, Quality, Academic Quality, and the Center for Teaching and Learning. And for the last about 18 months or so, our team has been focused on creating, designing and developing programs for online delivery. I'm currently the manager of this awesome team. And I bring roughly about 20 years of teaching experience, a combination of online and face-to-face environments. And in the past, I've functioned as an instructional designer and educational technology specialist.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Pearce. So I work on the online learning and development team with Brian. My role is I'm an academic technology consultant, and essentially my role, I kind of work as a hybrid. I'm a bit of a curriculum design specialist and a bit of an instructional designer. I have been teaching at Mohawk for the past 6 years, both online courses and face-to-face courses, and I love it, and I hope you enjoyed today's session.
Hi, everybody. My name is Bernadette. I'm on a part-time contract with Mohawk. I have about 6 years of teaching and learning experience in the Ontario colleges. And I'm primarily an instructional designer with this really fantastic team. I will be manning the chat, so if anybody has any questions, just type them in the chat, and I'm hoping I can answer anything you have.
Great. Okay, so now we're just going to chat quickly about the learning outcomes and what you can expect to get out of today's session. So the first is we're going to discuss the significance of really well-organized, aesthetically pleasing online interfaces. We're going to be examining some templates that support the online learner. And finally, we are going to discuss very practical and engaging activities that can be applied to online courses.
Yeah, so clearly, as the results indicate, there is a need for, I think, in general, across courses to have kind of a consistent look and feel and navigation across courses within a program. And we've really been fortunate in our project in that we have the ability to look at the design of courses at a programmatic level rather than just at an individual course level throughout our project. So what we were able to do is we have a graphic designer on our team, and Jess, can you go to the Envision site? So what we did is we worked with our graphic designer. This is still a work in progress, and what we've done is come up with a general spec guide, and so we've come up with essentially like a number of color books, as she refers to them. That in each color can be used for a course. So if we're developing a program with, say, 6 courses in it or 12 courses, we would choose either 6 or 12 color books to represent the different courses within the program. And you can see, so for each course, we have a primary color, or each color book rather, and then from the primary color, those are all based off of Mohawk College's either primary or secondary corporate colors. And then from those, she's developed a set of complementary colors that can be used for things like icons, image rollovers, heading backgrounds, text colors, and these sorts of things. So we would choose a number of color books to line up with the different courses. Where possible, we try and choose a color that sort of thematically aligns with the topic or content in the program or course. For example, some of the examples we're going to show you are from an office admin program that we've developed. So we're teaching a course on Word, so naturally we chose a blue color because that aligns with sort of the branding of Word. We chose green for the Excel or the financial course, and so on. We've also developed a series of icons, and in here this demonstrates 5 different versions of the icons that we use, and we would choose them based on the look and feel that we're going to implement in the program, and then the colors would be altered to match the different courses within the program. And the icons were created, basically we have icons to match up with things like assignments, discussions, time on task, quizzes, attendance, summary, learning outcomes, and so on. So we tried to align the icons with the type of activities or interactions that we have set up in our course designs. Also, we have a set of fonts that we can choose from. These are 3 basic fonts that we would choose as sort of the core font for the course. These are all Google fonts, freely and openly available, and our graphic designer Vicky put in a lot of research in terms of finding ones that are highly accessible and that unique characters and glyphs are highly recognizable and easy to read. Jess, if you zoom right in there a little bit on the first font on the left, Yantramaninoff, that's the one we're using as our primary font, because if you look at the character accessibility check line there, where it shows characters put together like TR, RT, IJ, IL. This font uses dots on the I's, and it really makes the differentiation between certain letters more readable than other fonts. So when we're designing a program, for example, we'd choose the colors the number of color books that we need. We would choose a font that thematically aligns with the program and the look and feel that we're going for. The next page shows an alternate font that we would use for things like headings. So this would be a complementary font chosen to, again, to align with the look and feel of the program. Yep, there's more examples. So the idea was to sort of narrow down the number of choices of fonts. And then we come up with from there, we choose these elements and create a specific spec guide for the program in which we would illustrate which fonts would be used, in which colors, and for which elements, like for different levels of headings, paragraphs, lists, and so on. And then we illustrate and demonstrate what they would look like in practice in terms of, what does the level 1 heading look like, the level 2, and so on. And you can see in the example on the right where it shows the links, link active, link hover, and link visited. It's where the accent colors from the color book are applied to things like hyperlinks and tables and so on. Yeah, so basically what we've done is, as I said, we've come up with this general spec guide with the help of a graphic designer. We then pick and choose elements from the general spec guide to build out a custom and specific spec guide for the program that we're developing, and that becomes a guide in which we work with to develop the look and feel, the cascading style sheet, the images, and so on for the program as we're developing it. And then now what we can do is show you some examples of that work in practice.
So this screenshot that you see here, as Brian mentioned, one of the programs that we are developing fully online is an office administration program. And we use D2L Brightspace, and we're using Daylight. So this is the homepage that a student would see when they log in, and they see all their courses laid out. Normally they would see them scattered. Each course would have a different thumbnail. Sometimes it would automatically just become like a mountain or a ladder or some sort of landscape picture representing each course. But what we have done is that for each course in this office administration program, we have the same background with specific assigned colors, as Brian was just mentioning. So if, for example, the student was to enter this course, their financial foundations, it has a green background. And as they enter that particular eLearn shell, they will see that the background images for that particular course, they color coordinate with what you see here, as do the other courses, whether it's document production, presentation skills, digital communication skills, you name it. And this we find is helping students really focus in and understand the courses much better and how they're organized. It's organized in a much more clear manner. So that way students don't have to search through their homepage to try to find their specific course, that they can see it right then and there, and then they'll know the color that corresponds with their course. So this is an example. So this is this is from an office administration program, specifically the financial foundations course. So the course I was just mentioning before that has the green background. So this is one of the templates, one of the first templates that the students will see when they log in. It's a get started help and support page. Again, color coordinating all the way.
So after having gone through all that work, when we actually develop the layout, the look and feel, and the organization of the courses, we tried to base that on some of the work of Eric Meyer's Principles of Multimedia Learning. And three of the main principles we pull for this type of work are the signaling principle, which basically says that people learn better when there are cues that highlight the organization of essential information. So that's one of the main goals of the templates that we've developed. The second is the segmenting principle, and that people learn better that is user-paced rather than sort of a continuous unit. So we try and chunk content into segments in terms of either an activity, and then also when we're developing media or sort of recorded lectures and these sorts of things, we try and chunk the content down into smaller usable packets rather than larger units. And then also the pre-training principle with the assumption that people learn better when they know the names and characters of the main concepts sort of before they enter that process of learning about those characters or concepts.
So now we're going to chat a little bit more about the course navigation and how we have set that up. So every single course that exists within one program is laid out in a very similar way. I'm going to jump into one particular eLearn course and show you around. I'll go through the homepage, the content, and I can give you a look as to how the assessments are laid out, as well as how the modules are broken down. And something that we really have been trying very hard to do is we want to ensure that every course is laid out in a very similar way. Brian and I had a very interesting conversation with our graphic designer who developed those beautiful spec guides that we were just showing you. And she was working with us as a graphic design student at Mohawk. And we were having a conversation and she mentioned that, you know, whenever a new semester starts, she gets access to her eLearn shells. In every course she's in, she feels like she has to relearn eLearn. And because all the instructors use it differently, they're laid out in different ways. So she has to kind of relearn how to navigate her way through it. So this is something that, you know I have kept in mind, and we really strive to make sure that everything is laid out in a very similar fashion so students don't have to go through that. So this course that I'll show you, this is in a Community and Social Services Management graduate certificate. This is fully online, and the course itself is called Public Administration. So when you log in on the landing page, you are automatically given a welcome message, welcoming every individual student to the course, explaining the instructor can write in what exactly they want students to see. For example, check out the news feature. And as well, we have these built-in videos that explain how exactly students can navigate through Brightspace if they're unfamiliar, how to use discussion boards, quiz features, Dropbox, you name it. As well, on the right-hand side, we have a Zoom quick guide. In several of our courses, we have instructors using Zoom, whether they are using it to do live lectures or if they are using it as their virtual office hours. So we have a little guide here that both instructors can access to help them familiarize themselves with Zoom if they haven't used it before, as well as students. So if students are unfamiliar with Zoom, they can take a look through this, figure out how to join a meeting, how to schedule a meeting, understanding meeting controls, that sort of thing. So I'm just going to pop over into the content section. And the first module that I'm going to show you is the course requirements. So again, in all of our courses, this is how they're laid out. We've got our course requirements, which is the first module students see, assignments, plagiarism tutorial, and then the modules themselves will follow. So our course requirements, we're going to show you some of the templates that we have used here. So the guide to begin, here we lay out how we explain to students the learning outcomes and why they are so significant. They're going to be seeing them a lot in other templates and explaining to students what they mean because often they're unsure about that, where they can locate their content, performing the system check, ensuring that they check out the course requirements page, explaining to them all the essential information they need to know, a spiel on academic integrity, of course, and again, more videos on how exactly they can navigate through Brightspace if they're unfamiliar, as well as additional information about Zoom and where they can seek support if they need it. This course requirements template just breaks down resources that students may need, textbooks, technical requirements for this. They need a webcam and a headset and a high-speed internet. And under policies and procedures, this is where our faculty will fill out information as they want it, so indicating whether or not they want students to use Turnitin, how they will accept assignment submissions and what type of file format, if they will accept late assignments and what their policy is on that, and how exactly they want students to report an illness if they happen to miss a test, for example, because they were sick.
If I can just chime in there just for a second. In that example we showed you, that information is not filled in because this is a master course. So when we offer this course, we would work with the instructor to customize it to their preference. So it's left, you can see the square brackets with the idea that anything in a square bracket should be customized, edited by the instructor during the semester for delivery.
Yeah, exactly. And again, this is the public administration course. So if a student was registered in another course in this program, let's say Canadian Social Economy, which is another course offered the first semester, these templates would also be listed. They would be, again, kind of color matched to that specific course. They would be blue in that case, but the templates would be the same and the information would be just as easy to locate. So this is just an assessment breakdown where the student can see how many assessments they have in the course, the weighting, and then a hyperlink that will take them directly to it. Instructor information. So here, of course, we have the instructors fill out a little information about themselves, giving them a background on their teaching experience. And then again, they would go, like Brian was saying, they would go in and fill in, they would tell us what they want to have here for their office hours, virtual office hours, how often or how quickly they'll respond to messages, and of course, have their contact information, so how they can be reached. And, if, for example, there's an emergency, how they will communicate with the students. And of course, a good old help and support page where we have technical support, how exactly students can use eLearn or Brightspace, more information on how to use Zoom in case they need extra support with that, accessibility standards, privacy policies, and how students can use ReadSpeaker or DocRater if they need to. Okay. This course particularly has a lot of online discussions. Not every single course would have this template, but we felt that because there was so much discussions going on that we wanted to give an overview to students explaining how they would work if they were unfamiliar. So just a breakdown of how the discussions will work, how much it's worth for their grade, instructions, resources, a small discussion rubric, and how exactly they can access them. Okay, so as you can see, that was our course requirements module. Next, we would typically have our assignments listed here. We follow the same format. We always include the value of each assignment, when exactly it's due, and every single assignment at the bottom of the instructions lists which course learning and outcome students would meet after they complete it, as well as a rubric. I won't walk you through every single assignment because we just don't have enough time for that, but as you can see, we follow that same format. And as Brian was mentioning earlier with the signaling principle and having images that cue certain messages to students, we have used, our graphic designer has created these icons as we were showing you before in the spec guide, and the puzzle piece icon indicates that it's an assignment that they have to complete. So now I'm just going to pop over into a module because one particular template that we really want to focus on is what we call our module overview template. So every single module here, the first item that you see on the list is module, whichever number it is, and overview. And these overview templates basically provide students with an agenda. It lists the expectations of students for that particular module. So if you scroll down, every one of these templates starts off with an introduction. So students can immediately see what exactly they are in for, so to speak, with that module, what they will be expected to learn, often how it will connect with the module they had just been, they were just visiting, so in this case, module 3. The topics that they will be going over. Here in this chart, we have, we list the learning outcomes that students will be meeting. So, course learning outcome number 4, and the corresponding element of performance that's found in the course outline. We always want to make very clear that students can see in multiple places which course learning outcomes they're going to meet. So as you saw before, they're listed at the bottom of each assessment. They're listed at the bottom of discussion postings as well, and in the module overview pages. In the time on task section, we have asked our subject matter experts who put together the content for these particular courses to break down how much time they expect students to dedicate towards each of these items, whether it's an online lecture, readings that students have to complete, videos they need to watch, and any kind of assignments or activities as well. So students, again, can have an idea of how much time they should expect to dedicate to that particular module. So in this case, this module would take about 5.5 hours for the student to complete. And we have added a note saying, of course, these times are approximate. If it's taking you a lot longer to complete them than what is indicated here, then you should contact your faculty member. And then here we have used the read, watch, complete, and attend framework, very clearly breaking down all of the items that students have to read, for example. So here they have to watch, they have to go through a PowerPoint, they have some readings they have to do in their textbook, as well as some articles that are linked here as well. And here we see that they have 2 videos that they need to watch. And under complete, this will be any type of activity or assignment students have to complete for that particular module. and as well as anything they have to attend. So in this particular course, the instructor wants students to attend regularly hosted synchronous lectures through Zoom that are 1 hour in length. And we have a module summary. So the module summary often connects what students have gone over in this module and how it related to the previous one they were just in, and how it's going to prepare them for the next module. We always try to get the SMEs to ensure that they're connecting the course content ideas between the modules. And finally, we have references that are listed. You know, we kind of joke that we have students make sure that they have to do APA formatting in their assignments, so we have to go by that as well. So again, this module overview template is listed in every single module that we have. And if we pop back over to module 4, all of those hyperlinks that you saw in the module overview pages, they can also be found here. So if I was to click on, for example, under the read section in module 4, if I scroll down to read and then I click on the PowerPoint, for example, it'll bring me directly here. And this is also listed under the content in module 4. So there's multiple spots for students to be able to locate that information. I'm sure many of you have experienced, especially if you're a faculty member, a student emailing you saying, I don't know where to find this, I don't know where to find that. So if they didn't watch the navigational videos that are listed in the announcements as well as the course requirements module, and if they didn't watch them, they may have difficulty finding it. But in this case, if they click on the module overview page, they can see the hyperlinks that are built in. And if not, if they choose to access it this way as well, they can. So this discussion posting is clearly posted here, but it's again also hyperlinked under the complete section in the module overview page. I'm just going to pop in and show you what our discussion boards look like. As I mentioned earlier, this particular course has a number of them. So for all of the courses, we have a Q&A discussion board, a water cooler discussion board where students can just kind of socialize and get to know each other. If they're having any technical errors or course content issues, an introduce yourself page. And then these are the discussion board postings where they are marked, and these are assigned assessments. So in this particular case, the instructions are clearly laid out, and at the bottom, again, those CLOs are reinforced. We try to make sure that that occurs for every single assessment that the students are completing. And then the last thing I will show you as well is just what our quizzes look like. Actually, I'm just going to preview this for you. So in this case, the only type of test that students have to complete for this particular course is a final exam. And this is just how the preview page looks. So it gives a breakdown of what exactly the formatting of the final exam will look like, and kind of helpful guidelines for students to make sure things that they wouldn't often think they need to do before they write an online test, especially if they haven't done it before, use the washroom, remove all the distractions, find a quiet space, make sure that you have stable internet connection, that sort of thing. Okay. So now I'm going to pop back over into our PowerPoint. And we're going to move on to the interaction component of the webinar.
Okay, so thanks, Jess. So for the interaction piece, we really sort of latched onto the idea of digital andragogy. For anyone who may be familiar, andragogy is a term coined by Malcolm Knowles a long time ago, which is basically the art and science of teaching adults as opposed to pedagogy, which was originally coined as a term for teaching children. And so digital andragogy is essentially the practice of educators to equip and encourage adult learners to choose and use accessible digital technologies that help them personalize their learning and facilitate interactions. And so we're looking at, how can we take some of those concepts and apply them to our program and course design? And four of the main principles we're looking at is to navigate, to add navigation that sort of scaffolds and chunks the content, as you saw in some of the module overview pages, for example, to try and make the immediate application of learning obvious, to provide opportunities to for creative development and reflection within a course, and then to provide a variety of modes and mediums of communication that students and instructors can engage with. So what we'd like to do now is show you some of the examples that we've, in courses that we've used to add some interactions in our courses. So here we have, let me refer to my notes. This is a word concepts course. And the one thing that we've done is, this course is very task oriented. Students come in often knowing very little, if anything, about programs like Word and Excel, and often have low tech skills. And when working with the instructor, a lot of the instructions are very text heavy and procedural. You know, as you can see in the example, step one includes maybe 5 to 10 sub steps or micro tasks, and then which would lead them to step 2, which then has a series of sub or micro tasks. And so what we thought was sort of in the principle of UDL, what we did is took those tasks and also created a video instruction where student could then listen and watch the procedure demonstrated, which may help them duplicate or replicate the procedure, and basically just giving them options in terms of how they consume and go through those instructions. Another example we have is, this is back to the Office Administration program, and this course is called Professional Administration Skills. And working with the SME, they provided with a document. It was basically a static Word document where they asked students to ascertain whether they speak too fast or too slow. Because these people, upon graduation, they may be working in an office, answering phones, communicating with people that walk in. And so the activity asks them to basically read a document and figure out whether they were speaking too fast or slow, which could be, you know, as a static activity on its own, might be not so engaging. So, you know, how do you figure out if you're speaking too fast or slow, unless you have a stopwatch and maybe you're working with somebody else? So we tried to just up the engagement level a little bit by, we provided 3 recorded examples of sort of the three little bears idea. We provided one example of someone speaking too fast, one example of somebody speaking too slow, and then one example of a person speaking just right, using the text on the left as examples. And then the tool that we learned about in a session 2 weeks ago called H5P, we utilized that because there's a function in there that allows people to record themselves. So if you scroll down just a little bit, Jess, on the bottom right-hand side, it says, now you try. So you've listened to good examples and bad examples, and so now hit record. You can record yourself listening to that example, and then it will give you a timer so you know exactly how long it took you to read. And if you choose so, you can download that recording and re-listen to it if you'd like. You can replay it and hear what you sound like, as opposed to you know, just sort of relying on what you think you sound like. We talked about the idea of having students submit those recordings, which we're not currently doing, but that could be a way also to up the engagement. Maybe have them submit the recordings in a discussion board and get peer feedback on how they sounded, and so on. The next example, sort of similar. It's an assignment they do after that activity that we just showed you, where it's sort of typical on-the-job scenario where they would get a phone call or a voice message from their boss listing a whole bunch of different tasks they need to complete. So we tried to simulate that by recording a voice message from their boss that provides a series of instructions that they need to complete for that assignment. Okay, a next example is the active listening. Again, same course. So are you a good listener? So again, this was presented to us by the instructor with basically just sort of a series of paper-based true-false multiple choice questions. So what we try to do is just up the interaction a little bit by making it an online interactive true-false, but we've also embedded some feedback into the questions. So if they choose it, yes or no, it doesn't give immediate feedback, but then as they get to the end of it, depending on how they score, there's 3 different types of feedback based on whether they performed really well, whether they did okay, or whether they're actually perceive themselves as a really good listener. Another example, and I'm just going to give this one and one more. I'm just conscious of the time. This is a human relations course in the same program, and the instructor wanted to provide students with a review for the midterm and or their final exam. So rather than give just sort of a paper-based exam, what we try to do is organize the information in terms of what concepts they need to know per module. And then we embedded small true-false multiple choice questions to help them sort of self-gauge their learning. And then below each true-false multiple choice activity, you can click that option where it says check your answers. And so they can, yeah, just below that.
Oops.
Oh, so go up a little
sorry.
bit. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
So we have the answers to the questions nested, so they're available. So for the students who don't really want to participate in the active learning element, the answers are there to use to check their answers, and but they're nested, so there's a little bit of work involved in trying to find those answers. Okay, and then the last example I wanted to provide is this course is a little bit different in that it's not part of a program. It's a micro course that we're offering on climate change management for business. And what we tried to do in each module, there are 3 modules within this course, and we've treated each module sort of like a course within a program, and they have their own look and feel. And on each page, we provided a module overview video, which gives a highlight of the main concepts, topics, activities, and outcomes the students should expect. On the right-hand panel, we've highlighted the main key terms within this module that sort of embedded a little bit of interaction where the student can sort of see the main terms, try and figure out whether they know the definition, and then they can click on that to read the definition. We've embedded learning outcomes, and then within each module, there's like a subsection. So in this one, I think there's 3 subsections, 1.1 and 1.2 and 1.3. And for each of these subsections, we've used, we provide some basic introductory text, and then we provide a learning activity where they can identify their learning goals. So it says there's a little button, create your learning goals. And they can input their own learning goals, or they can just copy and paste the learning goals that we've developed for this subsection of the module. And then the idea is they would go through the questions on the left. You can see they're identified question 1, 2, 3, and 4. And these questions are based on the main learning outcomes of this subsection of the module, and it's based on the readings and videos. So the idea is that as they go through the readings and videos, they can answer these questions. And then after they've answered the 4 questions, there's a section where they can rate their learning to see whether they met their own goals or not. And then when they get to the last section that says save your answers, when they click create document, what it does is it spits out a Word document. It's basically a summary of their learning and a cheat sheet for the formative assessment for this module that they must pass in order to get to the next module. So you can see there's we've used the read and watch complete framework here still, provided links and embedded videos. And so the idea is that they would complete those activities, and then at the end of it, they would complete the formative quiz, which they must get 80% or greater in order to proceed on to the next activity. Okay. Do you have anything to add, Jess?
No, I don't think so. You should.
Okay, we have about 6 minutes left, so I want to make sure we open it up. Does anybody have any questions? I know Bernadette's been doing an amazing job of answering
Brian.
questions in the chat board, so thank you.
Hi, Brian.
Hi.
Is there a, like, which one of the H5Ps were you using for the goals?
I would have to look it up. If anybody else has a question, go ahead, and I'll just take a second to look it up.
Yeah, I'm listening to all of this and watching and wondering how much support is available through the CTL Center in terms of integrating this technology into your online classroom. Because we can fill up the boxes with the content, but maybe aren't so good with understanding how to implement the technology.
Right. So our team is a little bit unique in that we're not part of the Center for Teaching and Learning. We take a team approach to the design and development. So we work with the instructors to get the content and the ideas, and then we work with them to flesh out the assignments, activities, and figure out how we can make things more interactive. In our Center for Teaching and Learning at Mohawk is quite good. They don't build courses for instructors, but they certainly have the expertise and the facility to work with faculty that come to them and say, hey, I have these ideas. How can I best implement them into my courses? So that is there. I can't find my login. I'm wondering, the person who asked the question about H5P, can you post that into the chat board with your email and I can look it up and respond to you that way? How do we connect with your team? Great question. I don't think that's an error we made. I didn't put our contact information, did I? I'm going to put just put my email into the chat. Jess, UK if I put yours?
Just put mine. I put it there.
Okay, great. Yes, thank you, Mark. You can also see it through the edtechontario.ca website.
Any other questions that anyone would like to ask with their audio?
There are so many. That, like, I almost feel like we need a full day of how to understand the relationship between the subject matter experts and what you guys are doing in your team. Like a full conference. Limited resources.
In a nutshell, what happens is we're in regular communication with our subject matter experts. I know I didn't get a chance to show you all of the templates that we have in our eLearn channels, but we basically have created those templates in Word documents. So what we do is we share those Word documents with our SMEs in a OneDrive folder. So for the module overview pages, for example, they will just go into the Word document, fill out their responses and how they want the module overview page to be set up. And as far as the building goes, the subject matter expert doesn't touch the building element. Brian and myself and Bernadette, we go into the eLearn shell and we take what they have created in their Word documents and then we build it out into eLearn. In a nutshell, that's what happens.
Yep, so I'm just conscious of the time. It's 2 minutes to 12, so we can wrap it up now. I'm happy to stay on and answer questions if anybody has them. But there was a question there or a request more about a conference to answer questions like this. And so, yes, there is an ETC conference coming up in May, May 15th, 16th, and 17th, 2019 at La Cité in Ottawa. So please keep your eyes and ears open for that and register to attend. We'll also be looking for presenters. I'm sure Jess and I will, and hopefully Bernadette will also be putting in a session to present. So if you do attend, we'll be happy to chat with anybody who's there. And there's another question I'm seeing about a link. So yes, there will be a link to our recorded presentation on the edtechontario.ca website. That'll probably take a couple of days, if not a week or so. And we will also make a copy of our slide deck available. It will have still images, some of the examples that we've provided, because we've sort of done that in real time, right? But, oh, okay. And also there's an EdTech Ontario YouTube channel where these sessions will be posted.
Great.
Okay. So yeah, feel free to keep asking questions if you have them. And if you have to go, thank you very much for attending.